All right, good evening. It's Sunday, October 30th, 2022. This is Retraice segment number 35. We're going to we're going to amend three segments, number 17, number 18, number 33. Gosh, doesn't that sound exciting? Today we're going to review, we're going to amend. No, man, this stuff is worth saying. It's all in the notes, but you don't read the notes, and I don't intend for you to read the notes. They're there for reference for the real diggers out there, the real archaeologists, the real scholars, the blue collar scholars. But I got to call attention to them because I don't know. I got it. So Retraice is about what's going on out there. It's 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. What else? Is there anything? Any boilerplate at the front? No. Okay. Re17, I just want to call out that I think that's where we introduced the hypotheses 1 through 11. I added a lot of sourcing for the claims that I made, and so you can go check that out. I think the next step here is really to go one by one through the hypotheses, to sort of just to talk about all that work that's in the notes there. But until then, I'm not even sure if that's the right direction to go, honestly. Like, I've been thinking about stuff today. We'll talk about it in a minute here, to do with, I don't know. I don't even know if I want to use the word conspiracy, but it's like, what work needs to be done? Like, do you need me to tell you what's going on with China, like, in depth? Is that really, like, you can't get that somewhere else? I can point you to 1,000 sources. And that's how a lot of the hypotheses are. Whereas there are certain things that need doing, like the big picture stuff. Maybe some sort of sane, competent thinking on conspiracy. We'll talk about it in a minute. Anyway, I think I said in that segment, Re17, that I had a way of simplifying the idea of betterment, or what makes something better. I did. I just didn't end up saying it on the segment, so it's in the notes. But it boils down to, like, a reduction of violence, cruelty, and suffering, an increase in control of the environment, an increase in transmission of culture, which is another way of describing education. And now in Re28, we've got the good model, RTFM. So all those things roll up into a way of making betterment. Some things make the future better than the past, making that into a tractable hypothesis. So that's Re17. Re18, I just did this thing where, in the notes, where I started defining terms. We're talking about, Re18 was the plan of attack on the hypotheses, how we're going to, make progress on these things, testing them and evaluating them and improving them. And I ended up, at the end of Re18, boiling it down to, I don't think that's the one that's a pile of numbers, but it's the one that leads into a pile of numbers. What's Re19? I think Re18 was paid, but Re19 is... No. So I call it plan of attack, but it boils down to a pile of numbers. Anyway, to get to that to convert these sort of squishy English claim, statements, propositions, that were the 11 hypotheses, to get those to, like, a really hard science tractable state. The idea is, it was and is, to focus on objective evidence, to get it to a pile of numbers, etc. I talk about it in the notes, start defining terms. What terms do I define? I define objective. I talk about the SI units. I define subjective, observable, unobservable, quantitative, qualitative. And then I come up with this thing that this is not my job. Like, nobody hired me to do philosophy of language or philosophy of science, but this idea of objective observables. And I think I said that phrase during the segment. I don't remember if I said it during the segment, but it was in my mind. I think I can defend that. Like, objective observables sounds redundant, but if you think about the fact, this might be the only fact, but it's at least this fact, that you can observe the events in your own mind, your own thoughts. Those observations are subjective observables, whereas objective observables, it just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Objective observables are like the other five senses. stuff that, is part of the shared common reality that's not subjective. So objective observables is where we would want to go with a pile of numbers, replacing the squishy English versions of the hypotheses. Check it out if you want. I'm definitely going to build on it as necessary. Obviously, this is groundwork for. Okay, and so then the last segment I want to talk about is Re33, which is a more recent one. The Re17 and Re18 are from like March of this year. We took a lot of time to focus on the business again during the middle of the year, so that stuff's it's not fresh in my memory, nor probably yours. Re33 is more recent, just a few days ago. And at the end of it, I said, I made a little neural connection, and somebody said this before. I was talking about outsiders, power, and wasting of resources, and I said, I talked about the idea of, what if there's nothing we can do? What if we're asking the question, what's going on out there? We're getting answers, trying to produce our own answers as individuals or as groups or as outsiders or even insiders. And it's like, what if it's just like watching a TV? Like, what if we're talking about things, the 80-20 thing, 20% of the people in the world control, are 80% in charge, and it could be much, much more lopsided than that. And then I remember that somebody said something like this, and I couldn't place it. I knew kind of so I found it. I always find it. Like I swear, a big chunk of the time in my life is spent tracking down these thoughts where there's like one, there's the Jennifer Aniston neuron. Have you heard this? There's somebody did a study and convinced themselves that people which is probably the vast majority of Western civilization, who know who Jennifer Aniston is, that you can like narrow it down to a single neuron that corresponds to recognition of her name or face. I don't know. I didn't read that. I'm not going to read a study about the Jennifer Aniston. Yes, now I'm going to have to because I'm talking about it. But that's what I have a bunch of those Jennifer Aniston neurons. Not for her. I mean, for all these things my neuron for that. Somebody said this thing. I was, there's nothing you can do. It was that phrase combined with somebody talking to somebody else, sort of in a conspiracy context. Anyway, I found it, and it's about UFOs. It's about MJ12. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's not. Nobody knows if it's a real thing. Obviously, as with everything. So here's the quote, and then I'm going to talk about what I'm not going to talk about, which is conspiracy on this segment. I think I'm going to push that to the next segment because it's a big topic and it deserves some attention. But the quote is this: Walker, who is Dr. Eric Walker, electrical engineer, seemed to make his way into some power circles in the first half of the 20th century. Harvard guy, and they call ufologists. Researchers, I don't know, nobody knows what to call people who investigate UFOs. They're never, credentialed. There's no way to become credentialed in this topic. It's not science, it's intelligence, but nobody follows that distinction. Steinman, this is in a book. I'll talk about it later. It's, what book? I mean, it'll be in the notes, but it's in this, and it was cited in another book. It doesn't matter, but okay, so Eric Walker, he gets a hold of this guy. Steinman, the researcher, gets a hold of this Dr. Eric Walker and sort of asks him the question, like, what about MJ12? What do you know? And I think they're doing this in written correspondence. It might have been a recording of a phone call, but this stuff is so dicey. If you look, like, they don't, is he writing it from memory? Blah blah blah. Anyway, this is what I was remembering. Shut up, and just say it. I will. Okay, I'm sorry. Dr. Walker, yes, I know of MJ12. I have known of them for 40 years. I believe you're chasing after and fighting with windmills. What the hell does that mean, windmills? Steinman, why do you say that? Walker, you are delving into an area that you can do absolutely nothing about. So why get involved with it or at all concerned about it? Why don't you just leave it alone and drop it? Forget about it. That's what I was remembering, that little exchange. You are delving into an area that you can do absolutely nothing about. Now that's stuck in my mind, and then I remember. I'm not going to talk about the providence of this quote. I'm not going to talk about whether I think this really was an exchange or that, the premise that Walker actually knows something and that Steinman is telling us the truth and about this exchange. No, that's all I'll do that in the next segment. But that's what I was remembering. All right, that's it. We've cleaned house on amendments and corrections. I've been meaning to do that for a while. References will be in the show notes. Full PDF notes at retraice.com, retraice.com. This is Retraice segment number 35. Enunciate this, please. This is Retraice segment number 35. Next one's tomorrow, same time, 11 p.m., 8 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Signing off.